conflicts, pushed by actual energy scarcity, then becomes very explosive.
Take even the question of Iraq. Some people think we went to Iraq to obtain oil.
The Iraq War, as everybody knows, would have been unthinkable without the oil situation.
Everybody wants the oil. China wants the oil. India wants the oil. The United States, Japan, Europe. Everybody wants the oil.
Now, for the last 10 years, it is very clear that the old club of industrial countries, America, Europe, Australia, Japan, are not the only consumers of oil any longer. That the old club of Western nation is being joined by new arrival. It's China, it's India, it's Mexico, it's Brazil, countries that now claim their right to the biosphere. So they increase their consumption of oil and other resources. They also assert their claim politically, insisting on their right to access to oil, insisting on their right to a certain share of fossil energy and fossil combustion. The genocide in Darfur, in Sudan, cannot be really effectively tackled by the international community because China is a major consumer of oil coming from Sudan. So therefore, China is not ready to act against the interest of the present Sudanese government. And therefore, China has so far impeded any effective collective action of the UN Security Council.
What is so shocking is that 1/3 of all the civil wars being fought right now, today, in the world, are in the oil-producing countries. We wake up every day and we hope that a pipeline hasn't been severed in some oil-producing country or that a government hasn't been destabilized. We cannot maintain the entire global economy and the survival of every family and every business and every economy based on the hope that someone won't sever a pipeline or topple a government. So we are reaching the end game, the sunset, the end game for oil and fossil fuels. It's increasingly risky to be in the business of supporting our energy habits with an energy regime that's increasingly under fire, literally under fire. This is a crisis. This is a turning point. This is the sunset, the twilight of an energy era.
The future of oil is not just a problem on the input side, in the sense where is the oil coming from and do we have enough, but it's also a problem on the output side. What is happening when oil is burnt? The excessive combustion of fossil fuels is responsible, in large part responsible, for climate chaos. It's enough to imagine sea levels rise by 20, 30 centimeters, not to speak about half a meter.
If all that ice melts, sea level rises 7 meters. It's scary.
The water level changes, the fertility of the land changes, the humidity of the air, the incidence of rains.
If these glaciers keep melting, is a situation where they will eventually disappear.
Many people will be forced to leave, to be displaced, to turn into refugees.
We need to also be thinking not just about the consequences of peak oil, but the consequences of climate change. In the late summer of 2007, we began getting a flurry of reports on ice melting. One came from scientists who were studying the ice in the Arctic Sea, and they pointed out that in a period of 1 week, an area of sea ice larger than the United Kingdom had disappeared. I mean, it was melting very fast. Scientists were staggered by this. They hadn't seen anything like this before. And then a few weeks later, in early September, we had reports from scientists who were studying the ice, the melting of the Greenland ice sheet. If all that ice melts, sea level rises 7 meters. I mean, it's scary.
Hundreds of millions of people live at coastlines that are lower than 1 meter above the sea level.
When a typical glacier in, say, Antarctica flows at maybe 100 or 200 meters a year. But last summer in Greenland, they measured a glacial outflow flowing at 2 meters an hour. I mean, you could literally, if you watched it carefully, you could see it moving. And one of the reasons it was flowing so fast was because the ice melting on the top of the ice sheet was the water was going down through the cracks, and it was lubricating the flow of the glacier into the sea. At the same time, we were getting reports from scientists in both India and China about the melting of the glaciers in the Himalayas and on the Tibetan Plateau. The ice melt from these glaciers during the dry season sustains the flow of all the major rivers in Asia. If these glaciers keep melting in the mountains of Asia, is a situation where they will eventually disappear, and there will be no ice melt to sustain rivers like the Ganges or the Yangtze, for example. The Ganges could become a seasonal river, flowing during the rainy season but not during the dry season. I've tried to imagine what the Gangetic Plain with 407 million people would look like if the Ganges River were not flowing, and I lack the imagination to see what that would translate into.
There is reason to suspect that in future more hunger, more misery will be caused by environmental reasons. Most of scientists agree that the bitter effect of climate change will first be felt by poor countries, and within the poor countries by poor people. Take agriculture. There are many people out there, marginal people, economically weak people who work the land, to get some meager fruit, some meager harvest. Now imagine that the water level changes, the fertility of the land changes, the humidity of the air, the incidence of rains. It is obvious that a situation like that will hit most sharply those people who are already working in fragile conditions, who are already very vulnerable, meaning they will have to leave their place, they will go hungry, they will be displaced, they will turn into refugees, they will go to cities, they will go abroad, maybe to Europe. So it's easily understandable. It's enough to think of deltas like in Bangladesh, delta, Mekong delta in Vietnam, and other places. It's easy to understand that a rise in sea level will immediately impact the livelihood possibilities of many people living in deltas and low-lying coast areas. Salt will come into the fields, drinking water will be spoiled, infections might spread.
We really don't have to go beyond ice melting to see that we have to restructure the world energy economy and do it quickly. When political leaders look at the need to cut carbon emissions, they typically talk about cutting carbon emissions 80% by 2050. We think we're going to have to cut carbon emissions 80% by 2020. Politicians ask the question, what's politically feasible? The question we ask is, how much and how fast do we have to cut carbon emissions if we want to save the Greenland ice sheet or if we want to save the glaciers?
A climate chaos in that sense is undercutting human rights in the